We're all obsessed with optimizing our lives, right? We're managing our time down to the second, we're crunching huge amounts of data, but what if we're looking in all the wrong places? Today, we're going to explore a couple of really powerful ideas that suggest the real keys to success are actually hiding in plain sight, in our own personal energy and in the tiny little details of how we all behave.
I mean, does this question hit home for you? Because it does for me. We feel so busy, our calendars are packed, we're always connected, and yet there's this feeling, right? This nagging sense that we're just stretched way too thin, kind of running on empty. And that feeling is exactly what we're going to get to the bottom of today.
So let's just dive right into the first big idea. For like decades, the holy grail of getting things done has been all about time management. But it turns out the real breakthrough isn't about counting the hours in your day. It's about the quality of your energy within those hours.
This quote from performance psychologist Jim Loehr just completely flips the script. Seriously, think about it for a second. You can have all the time in the world, but if you have zero energy, physically, mentally, emotionally, what good is that time? It's basically worthless. Energy is the fuel. Time is just the container you put it in.
In this comparison here, it just lays it all out so clearly. See, time management is kind of built on this flawed idea that our energy is infinite. You just have to cram more stuff into the slots you have. But energy management is way more realistic. It says, hey, your energy is a limited resource, and you have to be smart about how you spend it, and crucially, how you renew it. So the goal totally shifts from just being efficient to being fully 100% engaged.
So, what happens when we get this wrong? When we focus on the clock instead of our internal battery? Well, let's look at a quick story, a cautionary tale that really shows how high the stakes are.
Okay, so meet Roger. On paper, this guy had it all. He was a total rising star at his company. Just got a big promotion, making a six-figure salary, had a family. He was the poster child for success.
But here's where that perfect picture starts to crack. His boss started noticing that his performance had just plummeted. The guy who was once an A-plus player was now barely scraping by with a C. So, what was really going on?
Well, when they actually dug into it, the problems had nothing to do with his schedule. It was a full-blown energy crisis. He was physically exhausted, eating poorly, not exercising. He was emotionally drained, always impatient and negative. His relationships at work and even at home were shallow. And worst of all, he'd completely lost touch with any sense of passion or purpose. He was just running on fumes.
So here's the bottom line. Roger's life wasn't falling apart because he was bad at using Google Calendar. It was falling apart because he had totally neglected to manage his single most important resource, his own energy.
Okay, so hold that thought about Roger, because this exact same mistake, focusing on the big, obvious thing like time instead of the subtle human thing like energy, is happening on a massive scale in the business world too.
In this chart, it just perfectly captures the pivot we're talking about. Just like we got obsessed with time, businesses got obsessed with big data. It tells you what millions of people are doing. But small data, that's different. It focuses on the tiny, almost invisible behaviors that explain why they're doing it. It's how you go from just seeing a pattern to actually understanding the desire behind it.
Yes, small data isn't about giant spreadsheets. It's about being a detective of human behavior. It's about finding those little, seemingly insignificant clues that actually point to a huge, unmet emotional need. And let me tell you, when a company finds one of those, it's like striking gold.
All right, so let's make this real. These examples they're fantastic because they show you how unbelievably powerful these tiny little observations can be. First up, the weight loss company, Jenny Craig. They had a massive problem. People would sign up for their program, but then they'd quit at a really alarming rate. So they looked at all their big data and it was useless. It couldn't tell them why people were leaving. But then they found a small data clue. Researchers realized that their clients, many of whom were women whose kids had grown up and left home, felt invisible. They felt like this incredibly difficult journey they were on wasn't being seen or celebrated. So the solution? Oh, it was genius. A charm bracelet. Suddenly, every milestone, every pound lost wasn't just a number on a scale. It was a physical charm, a symbol of their story, their effort, and their new identity. And get this, the result was staggering. This one small emotional solution cut their customer dropout rate in half. That right there, that is the power of understanding the why. All right, you ready for another one? This next case study comes from the world of fashion. The Swiss brand Tally Wells was really struggling to connect with its teenage customers, especially with online shopping taking over.
So, the researchers didn't look at sales figures. No, they went into teenage girls' bedrooms, and the clues they found were incredible. Teddy bears right next to high-fashion magazines, a perfect symbol of being caught between being a kid and an adult. They learned that these girls were waking up an hour early, not to study, but to send selfies to their friends to get their outfits approved. They even noticed that oil-based hand creams were disappearing, all because they smudged phone screens. All these tiny clues pointed to one huge, deep-seated need: social validation. So what did Tallywheel do? They completely reinvented their stores. They turned them from these cluttered racks of clothes into what they called fashion temples. Social hubs with dressing rooms literally designed for taking selfies, so girls could get that instant feedback from their friends right there in the store.
Okay, so we've got these two big ideas floating around: managing our personal energy and using small data to understand customers. So what's the connection? What's the one big thread that ties all of this together?
It's this. The real answers, they're not in the big, impersonal numbers, whether that's hours in the day or massive data sets. The answer is in the small human clues. Roger's exhaustion wasn't a time problem, it was an energy clue. Jenny Craig's customer problem wasn't about their product, it was an identity clue. It is all about being more human-centric.
And this quote from Martin Lindstrom, who is really the pioneer of this whole small data concept, just says it all. The greatest evidence of who we are, of what we really truly want, it isn't in all the noise of big data. It's in the quiet whispers of our everyday lives.
And that really just leaves us with one final question for you. In your own life, or maybe in your work, what are the small clues you've been overlooking? What truth about your own energy or about the needs of the people around you is hiding there, right in plain sight?